Kevin Cooney at Forbes. We'll ask him coming up in just a matter of moments here on the Boardwalk on the Hotline. There's a lot of things happening with this Phillies team. They beat the Red Sox behind Jake Arrieta. And another thing that we'll talk with Kevin about is this pitching staff as the starting pitching for the Phillies. As Kevin pens types at Forbes are entering uncharted territory. We got a lot to dive into now on the August 1st first place Phillies. Kevin, how are you, pal?
I'm good. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing well as the calendar turns to August. You know, it's amazing. Training camp is here, and the Phillies are in first place. The Super Bowl champs can't get any attention. The Phillies are taking over.
Wait a week. It'll change. Then I'm sure they'll have like the Sixers shore tour, and then that'll take care of some of the other, and But no, look, it's a good time. I mean, the fact that they're in the hunt at this point is unexpected. It's refreshing, maybe a harbinger of things to come. But I mean, it beats the alternative. That's for sure.
Arrieta 9-2. 2.41 ERA if you take June out of the mix. Was last night a night that Philly fans should say, this is a 1-2 punch right here. Arrieta, Nola, we got two.
Yeah, the combination of the two nights in Boston, I think, were huge. Just because, I mean, you're coming off a really awful weekend. I know the Reds are better than the record appears, but you lost 3 there after winning that first night, and you're thinking, oh, no, here you go. We're going to Boston and everything. And they really should have won Monday night, and the Herrera base running error and then the Herrera field misjudgment should have been scored an error in center. Really cost Nola his best start ever. I mean, he should have got a win out of that game. And you're wondering, okay, is this where the fly really hits? Well, Jake Arrieta goes out and my buddy Jim Salisbury mentioned this morning, he called it John Wayne game, kind of a hop on my back and lead you. And they need the veterans on this team because there's so many young guys who have not been through this before. And playing baseball at this time of year is so much different. And I don't think people understand. It's still the game. It's still the same and everything. You're dealing with fatigue. You're dealing with pressure. And the opponents are going to, a lot of teams you're going to face have been there before. And you need that veteran to carry you. And Arrieta did that last night. And that's a really good sign for them moving forward. They got their top 2 certain. And it will be a good sign for them if they get to the postseason that they could kind of ride either one of them in short series.
Yeah, after them, as you wrote at Forbes, Kevin Cooney is with us, the starting pitching entering uncharted territory. You got those two. They didn't make a move for starting pitching. Now, they still can in August on the waiver deadline, but Eflin, Pivetta, and Velazquez, is that going to be good enough to get you chartering through August and September?
Well, and that's the big question in my mind. And I would have gone out. The only criticism I have of Matt Klentak is I would have gone out and I would have picked up another starter. And it didn't have to be, obviously Cole Hamels is the name that was out there. And, I get where people look at his numbers and say, Cole may be done and all that. But all it would have really cost would have been in salary. And it would have been at a point where you could have had another veteran leader. And I think that would have really helped. I mean, the main point of that article yesterday was you look at their numbers and you look at their inning totals and their pitch counts. And these are guys who are going to go into September and pitch way later than they ever have before in any circumstance. And you're going to put them in the heat of a pennant race. And it's a little daunting. And you could have maybe moved Velazquez back to the bullpen and reinforce the bullpen a little bit more. Or you could do the same with Pivetta. And Pivetta struggled to a 6.70 ERA since June 1st anyway. There's enough caution, there's enough cause to believe that they could have used another starting pitcher. I get they don't want to go in that market. There are times, though, that I feel that you have to. I felt this probably would have been one of those that you hate to look back at the end of the year and regret it.
Yeah, and you're looking to look at a series in say September where you're playing, Atlanta the last 3 games of the year. Would you rather have a guy like a Cole Hamels pitching in one of those games, or a guy like Jake Pivetta, who, as you mentioned, is in uncharted territory? That's where you wonder if they should have targeted a starting pitcher, and they still could.
Yeah, they still could. I mean, obviously, the Verlander deal got done, late last year, but the market's been pretty thinned out. You take Chris Archer, you take Jay Happ, you take Cole Hamels, and this was a weak starting pitching market to begin with. Would it have killed them to kick the tires on Kevin Gausman, who ended up with the Orioles? Probably not. There were a couple different options there. I think that it's one that maybe you revisit if something happens down the road. And what's also complicating this more, Mike, is there are so many teams that still believe they're in this race right now.
Yeah.
And not in the American League. The American League, there's probably 6 teams for 5 spots at this point. You could take Oakland and Seattle, and one of them will be a wild card, and they'll go up against the Yankees in the other wild card. But they're pretty much set. National League, it's so congested between you have the Nationals and you have the Braves and the Phillies and the Brewers and the Cubs and the Rockies and Diamondbacks and Dodgers and even the Giants kind of holding on here. A lot of these teams that are still like trying to decide are we really in it or not are going to wait out until the waiver period. So maybe something comes open. I just don't know if there's going to be the type of guy that's going to really change anything for this team.
Yeah, and I did make a couple of moves yesterday. Loop in the bullpen gives him another lefty arm, nice strikeout numbers. And, the Ramos thing behind the plate is, it's a nice deal to be able to pull off for virtually nothing to get a player that caliber, but when you're going to get them, and they got Cabrera last week. So, Kevin, they kind of got their cake and eat it, too. They get to compete this year by not giving up anything.
Yeah, and I think that's what actually I got to give Matt Klentak a lot of credit for. They didn't mortgage anything. None of the guys they gave up, Franklin Colomb is a margin. Some people had him in the top 10, but it was pretty clear he had fallen back in some of the organization's eyes and was not really going to get a serious look here as a starter. But the Ramos deal cost you basically cash. Maybe a low-level prospect will go back if he plays. And look, there's a risk there with the idea that you don't know when you're going to get him back. But when you get him back, think about this, Mike. When you get him back, you're getting a veteran catcher who's been through playoffs before with a better bat. That is a really good circumstance for this club to have going down the stretch here. And I think that's something that if I'm them, I feel really good about.
Kevin Cooney is covering the Phillies for Forbes.com as the Phillies, of course, make a move, 2 moves yesterday. They beat the Red Sox. They had that game 13 innings the other night. If people are on the fence about this team, Kevin, should they jump to one side or the other? Are you ready to make a stern assertion of what this team is?
No, I don't think anybody can. They're a good team. I think they're much better. They're much improved. But, and I'll use this example, and I used it on Twitter yesterday. If I'm the Washington Nationals and I'm looking at the Phillies and the Braves, I'm going, why am I giving up now? I'm 5 out, behind these guys. There's enough of an unknown on what you can do this year that a team like Washington could stay in the race. And so, if Washington plays up to their capabilities, Washington's still going to win this division. The question is, will they? If the Phillies play up to their capabilities, they can get in. They could get into the playoffs. They could, if with their top 2, they'd be dangerous in a round or so. But realistically, talent-wise, they're still out-talented. They've overachieved in a lot of ways as these kids are kind of growing up on the fly.
Mm-hmm. Which is something that Kapler said. We were a first-place team with this group, and they all should improve the second half of the year, which in his mind, when he was saying we don't need to add anything, these guys should get better.
Well, I think also, let's be honest, and Mike, you've been in enough locker rooms, and so have I. A manager always, unless they have some tenure, will say, guys in my locker room are good because he's afraid to say anything else. You can't go out and start lobbying if you're a first-year manager.
Right.
And you're trying to earn the respect of these guys and say that I'm here for you. So, Gabe worked it well on that, but perfect world, they had a lot of holes, and they still do.
Yeah.
I mean, their defense is awful. I mean, if anything's going to cost this team down the stretch here,
Yep.
it's not going to be the bullpen, and it's not going to be the pitching, and it probably won't even be the lineup. It'll be the fact that they can't catch the ball consistently enough. And that's a bit of a surprise. The Phillies have never, even in their worst years here, the Phillies have never been, downright awful defensively. They are right now. I mean, you look at the Herrera play on Monday night, you look at the way the catchers have had trouble with, the amount of pass balls they let up, the amount of wild pitches they let up that could be pass balls. They're defensively really weak in some spots, and Cabrera doesn't help them in any spot with that because he's not good defensively. Ramos is a little better in what they have now in Alfaro and Knapp in catching the ball. Obviously, he doesn't have Alfaro's arm. And that's the one area I'm convinced that if they fall apart here, it's going to be because of the defense.
Speaking of the defense, you've got Cabrera here now. Kingery has been playing short. You've got you got J.P. Crawford on the way back. Cabrera almost has to play every day with his bat, right?
You would think. I mean, obviously, I think that he'll be in some way. I wonder if the scenario that you're going to see, and maybe more than they're willing to admit, is would they have Cabrera play second a little more and put Crawford at short with the idea that Cabrera's bat, while they don't like taking Hernandez's bat out, it would give Hernandez some time off. He hasn't quite looked right with that foot since the All-Star break. So maybe that's what's going to happen here as a compromise until rosters expand a little later. You have Kingery, who can kind of be a super utility as well, around. This is the trick. It's going to be the trick on how do you put a lineup out there that's going to overcome whatever defensive obstacles you have, and you got to figure Cabrera's going to be in it.
And he's not a very good defensive player at this stage.
No, and you got to figure he's going to be in the lineup 5 days a week, some form.
Yeah. And then, you figure Kingery, he's a guy they like a lot, but at this stage of the game, doesn't Kapler almost have to say, look, we got to just put him into a bench role at this point?
Yeah, I think that's coming. I mean, once Crawford comes up, you would think that that's going to.
How do you think the third? Do you think Crawford goes back to third, or has Franco kind of regained that spot?
Franco's established himself for the rest of the year at least to be the third baseman.
Right. He's what? He's leading the team in hitting, average wise.
Yeah, and you look at his power numbers. They've rebounded.
Talking with Kevin Cooney here from Forbes, and real quick, you take a look at the bullpen. They got Loop, but I don't know how much of an effect he's going to have. But do you think that the bullpen is in a situation where they might have to continue to look in August at that spot too, or do you like the way the bullpen? Because he has kind of changed the way he's handled that bullpen a little bit.
Yeah, he has, and he's obviously the main concern is what do you do in the ninth inning. I mean, Sir Anthony Dominguez has been I almost said Sir Anthony, which is a whole different guy coming out of the bullpen. Sir Anthony Dominguez, has the look of a closer, but he's also looked a little shaky here since the All-Star break, a little bit more in the walk category than you've gotten used to. But Kapler's also shown that he's willing to mix and match, and Neshek has pitched fairly well, and even Tommy Hunter has looked okay at times. And you have all these guys, and now you throw in, you now throw in the guy from Toronto into this in Loeb. They have enough pieces. The question is, are you going to carry basically a 10-man bullpen and only have two bench roles? I mean, that's you're going to worry at least when you get towards August.
We're breaking up with Kevin Cooney here. We'll see if we can put him on hold real fast and pop him back up, because one of the things he mentioned is maybe you go deeper in the bullpen and shorten your bench. Having Kingery as kind of the super utility man might allow them to do that, and they just brought Roman Quinn up as well. And then keep in mind, if they can get to September when the rosters expand a little bit, you can also add some more guys in that. So I want to bring Kevin back on that note. You mentioned, Kevin, maybe adding to the bullpen, shorten the bench. If Kingery goes to the bench, it might allow you to do that because he plays so many positions.
Yeah, he does. And, Mike, I apologize. I'm on the Blue right now, which is at a major accident. Ooh. So there's a lot of police activity around if you're wondering what's going on here. Yeah, I mean, Kingery to the bench gives them a lot of opportunities to do different things. He can play outfield, he can play second, he can play third, he can play short. The problem is, he's only hitting about 230. So you probably will want to make sure that you have some extra pop off the bench. Aaron Altair may still figure in here at some point to give them a little bit of a better swing off the bench. But they're in a little bit of it's a strange circumstance because they have a lot of pieces, but I'm not sure any of them have quite justified the ability to not go to the bench and they're or to feel comfortable with them coming off the bench. So a little unsettling as you get into August and September.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, but you know what? They're in uncharted territories for a good reason. This has been an interesting season, and then you got a bona fide ace at the top. The only other interesting decision, I guess, Eichhoff hasn't sniffed all season. Is there anything new with him? I know that there was some news on him a couple of weeks ago, but could he be that sneaky August acquisition?
Well, if you think about it, guys who have numbness in their fingers and who have really not thrown a baseball on a consistent basis for a while here, I'm not sure you can count on them to come back. If Jared Eichhoff comes back, it's another arm into the pile, and it's good for them because it would probably take some of the pressure off of somebody like Pivetta. It allow them to maybe consider on Velasquez. But I think it would be fool's gold to think that you're going to get Jared Eichhoff back at any point this year.
All right, Kevin Cooney here with the Phillies. Night off, and then an interesting stretch coming up as the calendar turns to August. Check him out at Forbes.com, his coverage of the Phillies, and at Kevin Cooney on Twitter. Kevin, thanks so much, pal. Always appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.